let's keep moving because I want to have a look at this. I don't know if you saw or have seen or have heard, Chewy, this new television show by Paddy Gower, who we've talked about once before. It seemed a bit, we'll see how they go sort of thing is what we said last time. Well, they did a piece last night on the trans community, and it's kind of I first think it's kind of a strange thing about kind of sorting out the trans issue. Like, just think about that. If you're part of the trans community, that people can sort out the issue that involves you. It does feel a little bit, I don't know.
This is my issue with some of the stuff that Paddy is doing. Like, it's a real mixed bag. Like, when he was talking about drug use and alcoholism and that sort of thing, that was about
personal connection. Yeah, personal connection.
It was personal. This is an issue that I am part of. When he then pivots to something that he's not part of and just wades in on a horse. I mean, do you have his tweet from the other day?
I'm going to show a bit of a clip shortly as well. Yeah, but look, I think the thing is, he does a show where he's talking about the issues. Paddy Gower has issues, and we all know that he has issues, but he's trying to have a play on words, saying he has issues to talk about. And one of the issues is the trans conversation. And I guess I'm thinking, there are some things within the gender ideological conversation we can be having right now, but I don't know. It felt like the trans issue. What does that mean? Are we going to talk about the gay issue or the straight issue? Are we going to talk about the Muslim issue? It seems putting a people group into a box and saying you're an issue in our society. It just smacked of sort of, I don't know, some idea that they thought was great out the back. In fact, I talked to some people in the trans community today, and let me read you. I'm not going to identify who it is because I haven't asked if I could, but let me read you one of the responses I got today. Paddy deciding to charge in as the trans white knight was pretty cringe.
Oh God, that's almost word for word from what I was saying. Paddy on a horse.
Yeah. More about this, and again, I'm not identifying who sent me this because I haven't asked them if I could. Regarding Paddy Gower, I just felt it was ill thought out and really shitty timing. The trans community has been enjoying a whole bunch of big wins lately, and this was a bit of a slap in the face from some middle-aged white guy riding the coattails of the Posey Parker controversy. Really, it's just attention we don't need or want. He didn't contribute anything of significance and just made the turfs nuclear with rage over it. And trans people will and are copping all the heat and blame for it as usual. It would be nice if guys like Paddy asked first and engaged with our trans groups like Gender Minority and Rainbow Youth. Now that I've said all that, the thing about this is everyone was fucked off with Paddy Gower. And I'll show you some stuff on Twitter shortly about that. Let's first of all have a look. This is from Paddy Gower's own Twitter feed. And this is what he put out sort of as why can't we talk transgender without losing our shit? It's funny. Why would you redact the word shit on Twitter?
It's
an ugly, toxic shouting match. We don't actually learn anything. Well, tonight we have a proper conversation and learn a lot. Do we now? Let's have a listen to it, to his setup and what he had about it.
Don't actually learn anything. Transgender people and their supporters have become the target of such vitriol, death threats and hate. And anyone who doesn't get it, who has questions and who makes mistakes in the process, risks getting shut down and cancelled. Well, tonight I say it's time to calm the farm. So tonight we are going to ask questions, we're going to have an open conversation, and we are going to learn a hell of a lot. And we're only going to mention Posey Parker once, and I already did that just then. Now, at the heart of this are real people, real families, grappling with stuff that is incredibly complex and can be insanely difficult. We've got to be able to talk about it. This is an issue for all of us.
Is it though? Is this an issue for all of us, Chewy?
No, I think it's a curiosity for some people. And at both ends of the spectrum, like a malicious curiosity and an actual genuine curiosity.
So here's the thing, yeah. I just wonder if some producer at the back of his show and Paddy Gower was like, "Hey, people don't understand what's going on," because this is part. I'm not going to play all of it. I'll give you the idea. This is a segment. I actually didn't watch the whole show, but I had a look at 3 on demand or whatever they're called, 3 now, and I skipped through it to find the bits. This is one of the bits they did where Paddy Gower I mean, I only can use the word mansplains to all of us the idea of the trans community and of, who they are and what the dictionary definition of things are. And this is what he did.
So the first thing to be clear on is sex and gender are different. Sex is anatomy, it's what you were born with. Gender, on the other hand, is what you identify as, who you are.
So I'm gonna put this like in the background. Let's just play on this, because my question was really, do we still have a society? And I don't know this because I'm in the weeds on these conversations. Yeah, you can see he's explaining every single term, and he's trying to explain what the medical side of it is and all of that in a nice little 3-minute package. Do we still need this in society today? Because I watch this and I go, so here's 3 minutes of probably NZ funding or Discovery funding that feels patronizing, like you're talking to a bunch of 5-year-olds about, things they don't know. So my first question is, do we need to have this explained to us by Paddy Gower? Do we? That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if we do, is he the right person to do it, or is this slightly more patronizing than helpful, Joey?
I don't have a problem with just here are the baseline terms that we're going to be using. Not everybody, like we've talked about this before, right? You've got to bring people along with you. You've got to have a common term of reference for stuff. Not everybody is going to be as plugged into this issue as a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook and all of that sort of stuff. So if Gran, who has never come across this before, gets an education about it, good.
Is she watching this?
She could be. But I think when you talk about broadcast television, if this is their first point of contact, it's good to have a baseline, in my opinion.
All right. Well, that's why I was saying maybe I'm in the weeds, because I'm like, do we really need to hear this? Is this something that society
I would
needs
be
to
rolling
hear?
my eyes because, I'm way further down the track than Paddy is, apparently. I've had conversations with trans friends and stuff like that. And this is what annoyed me about that initial tweet, right? As he said, it's impossible to have a conversation about trans issues without people screaming. I've asked some really clumsy, kind of undelicate questions so I can get a better understanding. And trans people have been incredibly generous and patient with answering these questions of me as I try to get better. It's this. He was both sides.
Yeah, well, that's one of the criticisms. Let me also say in the chat already, asking to my questions. Alas, Pat, yes, people still don't know. Sai says for some parts of the population, like my parents, this was a really good quick breakdown.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm coming from.
So therefore, okay, so I accept that. Like I said, I'm in the weeds, right? I don't need it, and I was wondering if others did. Yes, they do. So now the second part of my question was Paddy the right person to deliver that to them? Is he more of a like he's less threatening than having, let's just use the term, trans activist up there explaining to grandma and granddad what it was, or like they did quite an interesting interview with a trans woman and explaining life. They had actually 2 interviews, 2 trans women. They had conversations with one who was struggling to go to get the treatment, and one who was, I think, pretty much gone through the treatment in its entirety. So they were represented in the conversation, but it didn't feel like they were represented as well in the sort of this is the defining part of it. They told their stories, but not necessarily in their explanation. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, look, I would be happy to accept Paddy there as long as he's not positioning himself as a fucking expert. That would be my worry there. Like if he's saying, here are the things that I have discovered while learning about these things, maybe I'll bring you along with me. That I think that position is fine. But yeah, his role should be facilitating other people's stories so people can better understand and empathize what's going on. Because, like, for a lot of people, we've talked about this with the parliamentary occupations and stuff like that. Like, people like you and I that watch these things, it doesn't come as a surprise when something like the counter protest for Parker Posey happens, right?
Yeah,
we knew the feeling that was bubbling along there. We knew the things that had happened overseas with her, the positions that she had, the people that she associated with, and her supporters, and all of that sort of thing. But for mum and dad who just watched the broadcast news, suddenly there's a bunch of weirdos yelling at this blonde woman. What's going on? It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm more defending Paddy than I thought I would.
Well, you're not going to defend him when I play this next bit, especially as a stand-up comedian, because I'm going to play for you, and I think that TV3 has this magic trick where they don't let you watch footage off their website, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to hear it. So let me just bring it up. Let me bring it up. You're not going to be able to see it now. See, in this part here, there's actually footage that I can see. You guys can't. But have a listen to this joke made. I don't know. Listen to this joke made about transitioning. Here we go.
Hey, Paddy. I actually think it could be time for you to transition into the next segment of the show.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm more than ready to affirm that this is my own program, and now is the time to find something or someone that doesn't worry me out there. It's time for no issues.
So if there's no other reason to say this was a pile of shit, there was that. It wasn't even a dad joke; it was a granddad joke, perhaps.
Weak.
It was awful, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I also said that this pissed off everybody. Right? Mm-hmm. Everybody was pissed off by this. So it's interesting to see in the chat people talking about this was maybe good for, grandma, whatever, the grandparents and stuff. Because if you go onto the internet, and there's going to be a few rough tweets shown here if you're of a sensitive nature, but I'm showing you how it pissed off everybody. You had the turf world being nuts. Anti-woman activist Paddy Gower shuts down comments from everyday Kiwi women. Thanks, Paddy, the ultimate woman hater. So this is because there was no comments allowed on the videos, right? Okay. An intersex condition is not the same as someone who calls themselves trans. I should make clear to our audio thing, I'm reading people's tweets right now. These are not my opinions or the opinions of the management. If this is Gower's attempt to shed light on a contentious issue, all he has done is mislead the public by conflating a medical condition with a psychological one. And one more, Paddy Gower supports the mutilation of children. So that part of the internet was pissed off. But then also the other side of the internet wasn't particularly stoked about it either. Did anyone in the New Zealand trans community actually ask for this? Because I sure as heck did not, says Caitlin. Planner Walk says there's something about this that rubs me the wrong way. It feels very much like a cis person doing a both sides. I used to be on the side of why can't everyone be calm and reasonable, but then I realized the shit many trans people often have to go through, especially online. This one says, not Paddy Gower being like, this is an issue for all of us. No, actually, it would be better if you stayed out of trans people's business. If you're going to frame it as a both sides thing and mention cancel culture, and finally, creepy little Paddy Gower trying to stir up anti-trans hysteria is so on form that nobody is even surprised. So everyone was unhappy with this. And I guess as a broadcaster, one of two things, you kind of go, there's that old adage is, you'd rather have someone talking about you than not talking about you. So if they're talking about you in a grumpy way, that's better than not talking about you at all. Or you'd go, holy shit, we annihilate 100% of our audience. So there's a couple of things to think about there. But it seems that the world over did not like this wherever you sit on this conversation.
Yeah, and in some things you'd be like, cool, that's me in the middle, annoying everyone. But yeah, I think Paddy's not good at Twitter. If he does it himself, he's terrible at it. If he gets someone else to do it for him, they're not good at this. Like this week alone, I've seen him piss people off with this and comments about the teachers' union, just devastatingly bad. Yeah. But yeah, I get the feeling from a lot of the trans community that they're sick of being an object, that they just get kicked around for a little bit and then it dies down.
The trans debate, like let's debate this thing. Now I'll say it again. I think there are some conversations to be had, or maybe even some debates around, the gender ideology, that kind of stuff. But the trans community is a community. Like the gender ideological conversation is broader. It's not necessarily aiming at one group of people, whereas the trans community is a group of people. That's like the Māori community or the retired community. It's a group of people. Talking about retirement, sort of thing, or the retirement age is different from talking about retired people. You know, it's a different way of looking at it. And it feels like when we talk about the trans issue or the trans problem or whatever, you're talking about the people issue or the people problem, as opposed to maybe a broader conversation around, you know, science or biology or even fucking sports, as little as that really matters, or whatever, which seems to be a bit broader. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just get the sense that things were just starting to die down, and then he wades into this again. Like, New Zealand is a small place, and I get the sense of a fatigue or weariness from trans people. They're like, oh shit, not this again. You know, we're already seeing incidents overseas because of this debate, where if a woman goes into a bathroom, there's a perception that they're getting checked out. Are they a real woman? Maybe they're not presenting in the right way to use this bathroom, you know. And we're such a small place, it wouldn't take much for that to take root here. Conversations around bathrooms and grooming, the language that's coming in from overseas, because that's where the anti-trans people are taking their cues from, is the overseas movement. They're just people. Just let people be people.
So there's three kinds of people in the world, Chewy. There's people who speak as they think, who speak after they think, or speak before they think. People who speak before they think are always well sort of thought out, and they sit on it and then they speak. People who think after they speak are fucking morons, and they never realize. I tend to be one of those people who think as I speak. And what I've just realized is I think why my uncomfortability with it was, as I was just talking there, I realized it. If I was to say to you this, that we were having a debate or we were talking about treaty issues, that feels very different from saying we're talking about the Māori issue. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Māori issues feels like it's pointing at people. Treaty issues feels like it's talking about legislation and government, and it's broader, and it's not necessarily aimed at one group of people, even though it really impacts that one group of people. And I think talking about trans like it's one of Paddy's issues does feel like it's really pointing at people rather than something broader. And that's why it's a bit ugly. I'm not saying you can't have conversations around broader issues to do with gender ideology and stuff, but it's so targeted at one group of people that it feels icky. And I do this a lot. If you change out that group with another group, it feels wrong. You know,
gays, what are they about?
Let's talk about that Asian issue. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, what? It feels wrong.
Yeah, I know what you mean about picking another group as like just roll back the clock to something that's not quite as contentious, something that we have discussed to death and kind of moved on with. You know, there's not as much stuff weaponized at say just the larger homosexual community. You know, we had that contentious debate and we've moved on, and we almost don't refer to it in the same way as we used to. And my hope is that if people just carry on, and my belief is the majority of people, that's all they want, is to carry on and not be dicks to each other.
Yeah, don't be dicks.
You know, people might ask some clumsy questions if they've never come across it before, but yeah, there's some people, and I'm not even going to say both sides because it's one side, that are literally debating the existence of a group of people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, if you've got any sense of history, has got to be worrying. Just don't be dicks to people.
Yeah,
and
I did.
Paddy, stop being a clumsy buffoon.
I like, when I say I don't like the thought of it, but I like the descriptive of the anonymous, person within the trans community that I've been messaging through today, when they said the knight. You don't have to be the knight for every issue, Paddy Gower. The reason, as Chewy said, that the drinking and that kind of stuff worked so well was there was a personal issue. You could speak to it personally. You can't speak to the trans conversation personally. It's not your conversation. It doesn't mean it can't be reported, because, to be honest, Chewy, we do it all the time. We talk to issues and about things that aren't personally us. But this is just a different one at the moment, especially when you hear the trans community saying, leave us alone. Stop talking about us. Like, it's a little bit like you back in the 60s, the young receptionist that got pinched by the bosses, and she's just like, please ignore me. I just don't want any attention from you. I have to sit here. I have to be in this office. I want to be here. I'm a part of this community, this group, this workplace, but please just ignore me. And what we're doing constantly is we're metaphorically pinching the bum of the trans community and pointing arrows at them when it seems like, as we've just read, they're saying, look, we're okay. Leave us alone. We're just living,
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Metaphorically pinching the bum. That might be a bit inappropriate for some, but
Like, I'm going to say, like, the Paddy Gower one about his drinking was an incredibly powerful piece of TV.
Agreed.
And yeah, you can't take that away from him. But he stumbles into things that he did. Like, I mean, we have talked about trans issues on the show as two straight white men. We talk about things that sometimes we aren't the best people to talk about it. But I think we've always tried to be as sensitive as we can, and we've tried to talk to people in those groups to make sure that we are on base. I know I certainly have.
Yeah.
And it just didn't say, like, he didn't do it good enough. Do better.
Yeah. And
Do
you always
better.
have to remember, when we talk about marginalized groups, I mean, you still are ginger, and I certainly grew up ginger, and we know that is the most marginalized group. So we can give a perspective to it. It may not be the same perspective, but it's a perspective.
Even, you want to talk about how oppressed my people are, the gingers. Even the sun hates us.